Space was quiet, too quiet for the crew of the VRL scout ship Kestra. They had been assigned a long-range patrol along the outer edge of the Droskon Belt, a region of empty black between inhabited star systems. Most days, it was the same, cold. Stars, silent radio channels, and the endless hum of their engines. But tonight, something was different. The ship's sensors were picking up a faint shadow, a moving shadow. At first, the crew thought it was a drifting asteroid, maybe a fragment from a collision millions of years ago. But the readings were wrong. Asteroids didn't move with such steady precision. They didn't accelerate without a push. This thing was moving slowly, deliberately through the darkness. Captain R'hllor leaned over the sensor display, his dark eyes narrowing as he adjusted the magnification. The shadow filled the screen, blocking out entire constellations as it passed. No ship in the galaxy was this big. Not the great Droskan war cruisers, not the ancient Khal dreadnoughts. This was something else entirely. The longer he looked, the more uneasy he felt. The object was so massive that it made their own. Ship feel like a speck of dust beside a mountain. And yet it moved as silently as a ghost, without a single energy signature matching known vessels. The crew whispered among themselves, and thought it might be a derelict generation ship, drifting for centuries after its engines died. Wondered if it was some unknown alien species, one that had never made contact. R'hllor, however, felt something deeper, a quiet dread pressing at the back of his mind. If this thing was built for war, it would be unstoppable. Then the first strange reading appeared. The Kestra's long-range scanners tried to probe the object, but every pulse returned scrambled, like static distorted by some unseen hand. It was almost as if the object was alive, pushing back against their scans. Engineer Turl swore under his breath and tried again, this time boosting the frequency range. For a moment the sensors caught something, a slow, rhythmic vibration coming from the object itself. For beats. Pause. For beats, pause. A low pulse, deep and steady, almost like a heartbeat. R'hllor felt the hair rise along his neck ridges. Ships didn't have heartbeats. Not like this. Gave the order to hold their position, but the crew's nerves were already fraying. The shadow was growing larger, filling the viewport with its bulk. There were no running lights, no visible engines, only jagged armor plates catching faint glints of starlight as the object drifted past. It was not just moving through space, it was cutting through it, like a predator gliding through dark water. Suddenly, movement. Smaller objects detached from the massive hull and darted into the void. At first, they looked like debris breaking away, but the moment they began to maneuver, the truth hit them. These were ships. Sleek, angular craft moved with impossible speed, curving through the dark like hunting animals. They did not broadcast identification codes. They did not hail the Kestra. They simply spread out in a wide formation surrounding the massive vessel. Like loyal guardians, the Kestra's communications officer froze. "Captain, those are human ships." The word struck the crew like a thunderclap. Humans, the species that had earned a reputation across the galaxy for their strange, unpredictable ways of war. The ones who had fought and won battles, they had no right to win. No one had seen humans in this sector for years. Now here they were escorting a ship so large it defied reason. One of the human craft passed close enough for the Kestra's cameras to catch its markings, black and silver hull plating. No insignia except a single red stripe along the nose. Its engines glowed a pale blue, but there was no heat bleed. No radiation leak. Silent, precise, deadly. The smaller ships made no aggressive move, but they didn't need to. The message was clear: stay away. The humans didn't speak a word, yet their intent was unmistakable. The supercarrier they guarded continued its slow advance toward the far edge of the system, and the scouts could only watch. R'hllor considered. Turning back, Shadow's presence was unsettling enough, but his instinct screamed that something bigger was happening. And then the long-range comms lit up. A voice came over the speakers. It was calm, almost too calm, and it spoke in perfect VRL dialect. "Do not follow." 3 words. That was all. No threats, no explanations. It's just a command. delivered with the certainty of someone who knew it would be obeyed. The voice cut out, leaving the Kestra in silence. The crew sat frozen at their stations. The hum of the engines, the only sound. R'hllor's mind raced. If this truly was a human vessel, then its scale meant only one thing: war. But what kind of war needed a ship like this? What enemy could justify building something so massive that it blotted out the stars? As the Kestra drifted in the shadow of the human carrier, R'hllor finally realized why it unsettled him so deeply. Ships of that size weren't built for defense. They weren't built to patrol or transport. They were built to control entire battles. At once to project power across systems, to bend wars to their will. The heartbeat-like vibration came again, faint but unmistakable, rattling the Kestra's hull. For beats. Pause. For beats. The massive ship moved on, its escorts tightening formation, its black hull disappearing into the deep void ahead. Within minutes, it was gone, swallowed by darkness, leaving only the faint pulse echoing through. Space? R'hllor knew they had just seen something the galaxy wasn't ready for. Something that wasn't supposed to exist. And whatever mission it was on, it was heading straight toward the front lines. He felt a cold certainty settle over him. This wasn't just another warship. This was a harbinger. The shadow of the human supercarrier still lingered in the minds of the Kestra's crew long after it vanished into the void. They had expected silence after it disappeared. Quiet stars, empty space. But instead, the sensors picked up something. New, a signal, faint, buried in static. At first, the comms officer thought it was just background noise from the Droskan Belt's electromagnetic storms. But as she filtered the frequency, words began to emerge. Not a warning this time. Not a warning this time. A threat. A simple set of coordinates, pulsing over and over, like a heartbeat calling them forward. Captain R'hllor hesitated. Everything in his training told him to turn back and report to the fleet. But something about those coordinates pulled at him. Why send a message to a Virel scout? Why not to their military command directly? Unless the humans wanted secrecy. He gave the order to change course, ignoring the uneasy glances from his crew. The Kestra's engines flared as they moved deeper into uncharted space. Following the invisible trail left by the giant ship, hours passed in tense silence. The stars here seemed colder, the darkness thicker. Then, without warning, the shadow returned, not ahead of them this time, but behind. The Kestra's proximity alarms wailed as the massive hull of the human vessel emerged from the black, sliding into view like a leviathan surfacing from deep water. No lights, no weapons charging, just there, watching. The smaller human escort. Ships were nowhere to be seen. It was just the supercarrier, dwarfing them in size. A silent wall of black steel and unknown purpose. A voice came over the comms again. This time, it wasn't speaking Virel. It was human, rough and low, the words sharp like a knife cutting air. R'hllor's translator implant struggled for a second before the meaning formed in his mind. Prepare to receive a boarding party. The crew froze. Boarding? Here? In the middle of nowhere? R'hllor barely had time to protest before a shimmer of blue light appeared in the Kestra's main corridor. The shimmer expanded into a tall, overland energy gate. Crackling at the edges on from it, stepped 5 human soldiers. They wore black armor with faint red highlights, their visors reflecting the Kestra's dim interior lights. They didn't raise their weapons, but their presence filled the corridor like a crushing weight. One of them stepped forward, removing her helmet. She was pale-skinned, with short, dark hair and eyes that seemed to measure everything in a glance. Captain R'hllor, she said, speaking perfect Virel. You've seen our ship. It means you've already crossed a line your people will never forget. Now we decide if you live to report it. R'hllor's crew shifted uneasily, their hands drifting toward control panels and sidearms. But the human woman's voice carried the calm confidence of someone who didn't need to threaten twice. We don't care about your patrol. We care about your silence. What you saw is not for the galaxy to know. Yet, humans moved through the Kestra like they owned it, scanning consoles, checking navigation logs. even examining personal data pads. They weren't here to steal or destroy. They were here to erase carefully, methodically every trace of their supercarrier's existence. R'hllor tried to ask questions, but the human leader silenced him with a look. When they finished, the woman stood in front of him again. Our ship is called the Vanguard. It is the first of its kind, and the last your people will ever see. We are on a mission that will decide the future of this galaxy. We will fight enemies you've never faced, in places you've never imagined. Stay out of our way, and you may survive what's coming. R'hllor wanted to demand answers. What enemy? Why such a massive ship? But before he could speak, the humans activated their gate. A blue light flared again, and in an instant, they were gone. The Kestra's systems came back online, and the starfield outside looked empty once more. But the silence didn't feel the same. Now it felt heavy. The captain turned to his crew, expecting fear or panic. Instead, he saw something worse: curiosity. They had just met humans face to face. They had felt the weight of their presence, the quiet force behind their words. And deep down, R'hllor knew the Kestra wouldn't be turning back yet. They still had the coordinates from the earlier transmission, buried in their system memory, before the humans could wipe it. R'hllor didn't erase them. Instead, he locked the file under his own personal access code. Whatever the humans were planning, whatever threat they were moving toward, the Varel command would want to know. As the Kestra powered forward once again, R'hllor stared into the dark ahead. Somewhere, out there, the Vanguard was moving toward its target. Somewhere out there, a battle was brewing that could shake the stars. And for the first time in years, R'hllor felt something he had almost forgotten in the monotony of patrol duty. Not fear, it's not dread, anticipation. The Kestra drifted at the edge of a dead system, its engine slow, its lights dimmed to avoid detection. They had followed the hidden coordinates for 2 standard cycles, moving farther from known space than any Virel scout had dared in decades. The crew had grown restless. The emptiness outside their viewports felt unnatural, as if even the stars had been swallowed by the black. Captain R'hllor was beginning to think the humans had led them into a trap until the silence broke. It began as a vibration, not from the Kestra itself, but from the very space around them. The air inside the ship felt heavier, as though unseen waves were pressing against the hull. Then the sensors came alive, their displays flashing with warnings. R'hllor leaned forward, and his eyes widened. A gravitational distortion was forming ahead of them, too controlled to be a black hole, too precise to be natural. Space itself twisted, light bending into a spiraling tunnel, and then it emerged. The human supercarrier slid out of the distortion, like a predator breaking the surface of dark water. This time, it wasn't hiding. Its hull caught the light from the distant star, revealing its immense size in full for the first time. Layer upon layer of armored plating, each section bristling with weapon ports. It wasn't just large, it was alive with motion. Smaller craft darted around it like escort fish, vanishing into launch bays before reappearing again. Enormous rail batteries lined its flanks, their barrels rotating into position with mechanical precision. At its bow, an array of glowing spines, pulsed with a low, ominous light. The Kestra's tactical officer's voice shook. "Captain, the power readings are off the scale. This ship could destroy a moon in a single volley." R'hllor said nothing. He could feel it too, the sheer, raw intent radiating from the vessel. The humans hadn't built this for defense. They had built it to end wars before they even began. A new signature appeared on the sensors. A formation of unknown warships, sleek and curved, shimmering with blue energy, dropped out of hyperspace ahead of the Vanguard. R'hllor recognized them instantly. Droskin raiders. Pirates who plagued the outer systems, notorious for their hit-and-run attacks. But these ships weren't running. They were advancing on the humans. The Droskins must not have known what they were facing. R'hllor opened his mouth to suggest retreat. But the Vanguard moved before the thought was complete. Its rail batteries fired first silent lances of molten metal, tearing through the void faster than the eye could track. The first Droskin ship vanished in a flash, its shields collapsing instantly before the entire vessel disintegrated in two. Glowing fragments, second and third ships scattered, but the humans didn't let them escape. The Vanguard's spines at the bow flared with blinding light, and a shockwave rippled through space. It wasn't just a weapon, it was an area of annihilation. Every Droskan ship caught within the wave's radius simply stopped. Engines dead, shields gone. Their hulls floated lifeless, drifting in silent surrender. It wasn't destruction, it was dominance. R'hllor's crew stared in open disbelief. The humans hadn't just fought, they had erased the enemy's will to resist in less than a minute. No wasted fire, no drawn-out engagement. It's just overwhelming force delivered with surgical precision then. Then, as if to drive the point deeper, the Vanguard deployed something new. From beneath its hull, massive hangar doors opened, releasing a swarm of small angular drones. They moved with unnatural coordination, darting toward the disabled Droskan ships. Within moments, they were cutting through the pirate hulls, breaching them, and dragging out prisoners in containment fields. No escape pods launched, no distress calls left the area. The humans took everything. The comms lit up again. The same human woman's voice filled the Kestra's bridge. "You shouldn't be here, Captain, but since you are, remember what you've seen? We don't bluff. We don't warn twice. Tell your leaders the Vanguard will not be challenged." And just like that, the giant ship turned away, its escort craft forming a protective wall around it. Another distortion began to form ahead of it, swallowing the Vanguard whole until only the empty void remained. The silence that followed felt crushing. R'hllor's crew didn't move for a long time. They just stared at the space where the Super had been, each of them replaying the battle in their minds. They'd all fought wars before. They'd all seen destruction. But this was something else entirely. It wasn't the scale of the weapons. It was the certainty. The humans didn't hope to win. They knew they would. R'hllor sat back slowly, feeling the weight of the moment settle on him. This wasn't just a ship. It was a statement, a warning to every power in the galaxy. And he feared that one day, that warning would turn into something far worse. The Kestra made the long journey back to Varel's space in silence. No one spoke much, and when they did, it was about repairs, supplies, or navigation. But everyone's mind was elsewhere back in that dead system, watching the Vanguard appear. From the darkness like some colossal predator from an ancient nightmare. Captain R'hllor didn't bother to record an official log until they were 3 jumps away from home. Even then, he hesitated before speaking. Some part of him feared that just describing the Supercarrier would make it more real. When they finally arrived in the Virel capital system, the Kestra was pulled into high-security docking. R'hllor was taken directly to the High Council chambers. The vast hall was lined with tiered seats, everyone filled with political leaders, military commanders, and advisors. Their expressions were expectant, some impatient. None of them had seen what R'hllor had seen. He stood in the center, the weight of 100 eyes pressing on him. "We found it," he began, his voice low but steady. "The human warship. Psst. Not like anything we've faced before. It's beyond classification." A murmur rippled through the chamber. One counselor leaned forward. "Beyond classification? Explain, Captain." "Our intelligence has encountered human carriers before. They are dangerous, yes, but not invincible." R'hllor's gaze hardened. "This one is different. Larger. More heavily armed. And its crew they fight without hesitation, without waste. In under 1 minute, they destroyed or disabled an entire pirate fleet, no losses, no mercy, and they took prisoners." That caught their attention. The room fell silent. Prisoners meant interrogation. And interrogation meant knowledge that could be used against anyone. R'hllor continued. "They call it the Vanguard. And they don't bluff. Their commander sent me a message. We don't warn twice." The words hung in the air like a shadow. Some counselors scoffed. "Perhaps it's just intimidation," one said. "Humans are known for their dramatics." R'hllor shook his head. "If it was a performance, it wasn't for me. They didn't need to prove anything. They acted because that's what they do." Yes. Debates flared. A signal interrupted the meeting. A low, rhythmic tone echoed through the hall priority transmission. A projection lit up in the center of the room, and suddenly, the humans were there. It wasn't live. It was a recorded broadcast. It was clear the Vanguard had sent it intentionally. The image showed the human commander, a tall woman with a sharp gaze that seemed to pierce through the council members themselves. Behind her, through a massive viewport, the Vanguard's weapons rotated into position as if ready for combat. Her voice was calm, almost cold.
Ow!
To all powers of the galaxy, we are not seeking war. But if war comes to us, we will finish it. Our fleets will not invade without cause, but know this: any attack on human territory will be met with a response so absolute that your fleets will not return. We have no interest in ruling your worlds, but we will not be ruled. The image shifted. Footage began to play, actual combat footage. It's the destruction of the Droskan fleet, the shockwave weapon, boarding drones tearing through pirate hulls. Every detail was presented without editing. No commentary. No exaggeration. Just proof. The broadcast ended with one final message. Remember the name. Vanguard. The chamber erupted in noise. Some counselors shouted for military buildup. Others demanded diplomatic outreach, while a few argued for complete avoidance of human-controlled space. But through it all, one truth was clear. The humans wanted the galaxy to know about the Vanguard. And now they did. R'hllor didn't join the argument. He just stood there, listening, knowing that none of these leaders truly understood what they had just seen. They were thinking like politicians, strategists, and generals. But the Vanguard wasn't about politics. It was about inevitability. Later, when the meeting broke into private sessions, R'hllor found himself walking alone through the long corridors of the council building. He couldn't shake the thought that the humans had sent this message for another reason, not just as a warning, but as bait. Enough of your power, and the ambitious would come to test it. The Vanguard was daring the galaxy to challenge them, and somewhere deep in his mind, R'hllor wondered, what if this was only one ship? If humanity could build a Vanguard, what else did they have hidden in the dark? News of the Vanguard spread faster than any official report could control. The human broadcast had been picked up not only by military intelligence, but by smugglers, traders, mercenaries, and every curious drifter in the outer systems. And with each retelling, the story grew. Some claimed the ship was the size of a moon. Others said it could warp entire star systems out of existence. Truth and rumor blurred into one terrifying legend. In the deep sectors, far from the Virel capital, another power listened with great interest: the Taishari Dominion. Proud, old, and cruel, the Taishari had ruled their region of space for centuries. Through fear and superior firepower, their fleets were vast, their capital ships unmatched, or so they believed. The idea that some upstart species from the fringe could command a ship that might rival their own pride was insulting. Inside the Dominion's War Council, Tessari leaders studied the human broadcast. Round the table sat generals with scars that told of 100 battles, their reptilian eyes cold and calculating. High Marshal Krath, leader of their war machine, spoke first. They wanted us to see this. They wanted everyone to fear them. I'd say we see how they fight when the prey fights back. An older strategist hissed in disagreement. If this vessel is as powerful as shown, attacking without full intelligence is dangerous. But Krath's grin was sharp. We will not attack with one fleet. We will attack with 3. And when we bring the wreck of this Vanguard to our homeworld, the galaxy will know the Tashari remain unchallenged. Within weeks, 3 massive Tashari battle groups gathered near the human frontier. Their ships blotted out the stars, dozens of destroyers, cruisers, and 3 dreadnoughts leading the formation. Scouts probed the border, searching for the Vanguard. And then, as if on cue, they found her. The Supercarrier was alone, drifting slowly near a barren moon, as if it had been caught mid-patrol. To the Tashari, it looked almost careless, exposed. Perfect. The Tashari fleets closed in, their weapons hot and shields raised. Krath ordered all ships to advance. He didn't bother with demands or negotiations. He wanted a quick, crushing victory. The first volley of plasma fire erupted from the Dominion dreadnoughts, internet energy to melt the surface of a planet. But before the shots reached their target, the space around the Vanguard rippled. It was not a shield, at least. Not one the Taishari had ever seen. The energy pulses simply vanished into nothingness, swallowed by some invisible distortion. Confusion spread through the enemy fleets. Scanners reported no damage to the Vanguard, no shield strain, nothing at all. Then the humans moved. The Vanguards. Engines ignited, but it didn't retreat. It surged forward. And from its hull, dozens of smaller shapes detached. Corvettes, interceptors, and attack drones, all perfectly synchronized. They didn't move like separate ships. They moved like one living organism. Krath snarled and ordered his ships to split fire between the carrier and the swarm. But just as they did, space itself seemed to tear open behind the Vanguard. Out of the rift emerged more human ships. Not just one or two, but an entire task forced, 2 more carriers, 6 battleships, and a screen of smaller warcraft. The trap was complete. The Vanguard had never been alone. The Taishari fleet found itself caught between 2 human formations. Human battleships opened fire with kinetic slugs, traveling at a fraction of light speed projectiles so fast that no known shield could block them entirely. Dreadnought armor cracked, split, and burned in seconds. The swarm from the Vanguard tore into the Taishari destroyers like a cloud of razors, each drone armed with precision explosives that burrowed into enemy hulls before detonating. Krath realized too late that the humans had planned this from the beginning. The broadcast wasn't just a warning, it was bait. The Vanguard had lured the Taishari fleets into a kill zone, timed perfectly for a human counterstrike. The battle didn't last an hour. By the time the last Taishari dreadnought fell silent, the survivors were fleeing in scattered, broken formations. And then, as if to make sure their message was understood, the humans transmitted a final image to the retreating ships. It showed the Vanguard, her massive hull gleaming in the starlight, surrounded by her fleet. No words, no threats. Just the silent, undeniable truth. Humans did not bluff, and they did not fight alone. The smoke of battle lingered in space. Debris drifted like silent tombstones, shattered dreadnought hulls, cracked armor plating, fragments of once mighty weapons. In the cold darkness, the Vanguard moved like a silent titan, her hull unmarred. Her engines, a steady glow. Around her, the surviving human fleet regrouped, drones returning to their bays, interceptors landing with precise grace. They had won, completely across the galaxy. The news spread faster than any fleet could travel. The destruction of 3 full Taishari battle grips was not just another war report, it was a message written in fire and blood. Entire systems replayed the captured battle footage. People who had never even heard of Earth now whispered the name with awe or fear. On the Taishari homeworld, silence filled the War Council chamber. Krath's seat sat empty. He was going to lost in the wreckage of his flagship. The once arrogant Dominion now faced a reality they had never imagined, a defeat so public, so total, that no amount of propaganda could erase it. For centuries, the Taishari had been the hunters. Now they had been hunted and broken. But while the Taishari licked their wounds, other powers saw opportunity. In the Viral Alliance, political leaders debated furiously. Some saw humans as dangerous, too aggressive, too unpredictable. Others argued that no one else could stand against the old empires like the Taishari, and that perhaps it was better to have humans as friends rather than enemies. Quietly, emissaries were sent toward Earth. On fringe worlds, smugglers, pirates, and mercenaries studied the Vanguard's tactics. Some hoped to learn from them. Others planned to avoid humans entirely. A few reckless captains dreamed of testing themselves against the Supercarrier, thinking perhaps the humans could be beaten if caught off guard. None of them understood they were already studying the wrong lesson. The Vanguard wasn't terrifying because of her size or weapons. She was terrifying because every move had been calculated before the enemy even saw her. Back aboard the Vanguard, Admiral Hayes stood on the command deck, looking out at the stars through the forward viewport. His officers moved with quiet efficiency, their faces calm, but their eyes still holding the sharpness of warriors who had tasted battle and prevailed. "Status of the fleet?" he asked. "All ships accounted for, Admiral," replied his second-in-command. "Minimal damage across the board. We've retrieved what's left of the Tashari's flagship for analysis." Hayes gave a slow nod. "Good. I want a full tactical breakdown. And make sure the outer listening posts are expanded. This was just the first strike. Someone else will try to test us next." He knew the galaxy. Victories like this didn't create peace, they created challengers. Far from the human fleet, a council of shadowy figures met in secret. They were not Tashari, nor Varel, nor any of the known great powers. They were older. Older than most civilizations still standing. It watched the rise and fall of empires for thousands of years, always from the dark edges of history. Now, for the first time in centuries, something had made them take notice. "They fight like predators," one voice said. "They fight like survivors," another corrected. "Every move is about living through the fight, no matter the cost to the enemy." A pause. They could be useful or dangerous.
Ow!
We will watch them closely. Back in human space, the Vanguard slipped into faster-than-light travel, her colossal frame vanishing into the shimmering distortion of a warp tunnel. To most of the crew, the battle was over, and the celebration could begin. But deep inside the Supercarrier's war room, new maps were being drawn, new strategies calculated. The humans were not done. They were just beginning, for the galaxy. The shockwave of the Vanguard's victory would last for years. Old rivalries would shift. Alliances would form in secret. And somewhere, in countless quiet conversations on hundreds of worlds, the same question would be asked in a dozen languages. If humans could build one ship like the Vanguard, how many more could they build? And beneath that question lay another, far darker thought: if the humans ever decided the galaxy itself was a threat, who could possibly stop them?